Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is a little bit new for us. We're usually behind a microphone, not so much in front of the camera. This is going to be our first
For
ever.
obvious reasons.
We are always behind a microphone on our podcast entitled The Fan's Guide to Animation. We're going to be doing The Fan's Guide to Animation, the show. Yeah. Jazz hands. You can see our hands now. Today we're going to be discussing Cowboy Bebop The Movie. And
AKA Cowboy Bebop Knocking on Heaven's Door.
There we go. And also, we did not introduce ourselves either. So I'm Anthony. He's Daniel.
Yeah.
So again, if you've never heard of us, there we go. That's our names. Yeah, we're trying. It's one of those movies that has gained even a big. It had a following since its initial release back in 2001 and then 2003 here in the U.S. And from there, it just only became a bigger phenomenon. The show was already a phenomenon. Then we had this film. Mm-hmm. And this particular movie takes place within episodes 22 and 23 of the show.
Yep.
And it deals with a particular bounty that the crew on Bebop have to face this time around. And our villain, his name is Vincent. He is the guy that everybody's after in this flick. And Spike, Faye, Jet, and Edward are all going to have to find a way to stop his evil plan.
Yeah, it's the stakes are raised a little bit in that he's a terrorist, although on the show there was a few terrorists, but not at this level. But it does feel very much in line with what the show was doing at the time. So it doesn't feel too out of place, but you could tell that they did try and distinguish it pretty radically, at least in like the world building. But this takes place on Mars, in a city that is so realistic. It's almost like a combination of New York and like Dubai or something like that.
The positive that I want to bring up for sure is just seeing the crew again, because although I was not aware of this show very much, my brother was a huge fan of this show. Before it was cool, not that he's a hipster or anything, but this is a 10-year-old kid showing his older brother this show. And
he was educating you on
yes. This show, it's funny because the show, I saw bits and pieces that my brother saw as we grew up. But the movie is the first thing I saw of Cowboy Bebop in its entirety. And one of the biggest things that I took away in terms of positive back then and positive now is just all around just the crew themselves. They were such fun characters to watch. And while they weren't the emphasis per se in this film, because it definitely is the villain Vincent's movie. It's definitely all about him and an explanation of his motivations and everything that's going on in the movie. But just seeing these characters, these iconic characters together, playing off of each other, and just the all-around just goal that they have to, like, what they have to do to this guy from stopping his mad plot of, well, essentially destroying the world. It sounds cliche, but it's a very poetic one at that. Like, it's a poetic, almost poetic justice. Is that what you want to say about it? Like, for the character. Like, it's what Vincent's trying to do in this movie. Like, he feels that there's a reason to do what he's doing. And that's always a scarier villain, because they feel what they're doing is right.
He seems much more intelligent than anybody on the Bebop, if I'm being honest. He's very conniving and intimidating, which is not something you got from a lot of the villains in Bebop. A lot of them were kind of like goofy.
Yeah, they were just kind of over the top.
But he was definitely, he did seem like he like meant business. And you could tell, like, he didn't have to do a lot to make you understand that he was a huge threat. Even when he did the smallest of things to threaten people. There was, like I said, he's a terrorist, so things blow up, obviously. So even in those moments, he didn't really do a whole lot or say a whole lot. It did have a bigger impact because it did seem like it was almost effortless, that he was creating such like chaos and destruction that it almost, like, it was scary. And you could understand why he was the villain for like this big movie as opposed to somebody else.
And then having to face a villain very, very much like way over their heads.
You could tell that they were definitely tested in this movie because they all had like weak moments where they weren't exactly ahead of the game, kind of like where they were sometimes in the show.
Because they're always the cool ragtag group that just kind of triumphs over any bad guy and just kicks their ass and just moves on, to the next.
Yeah.
This time around, yeah, you're right. They had a fair amount of weak moments that they got knocked down. In many cases, literally.
And at some points it kind of seemed like Vincent wins until they kind of, rally the troops and, get together and then they figure it out.
Exactly. So I guess what besides the villain, what other, I guess, positive things you felt that you got out of this flick?
I do like that it did try something a little different. Like I said, with the tone kind of being a little bit more serious than usual, it did feel like they deliberately tried to make the world more realistic and everything a little bit more realistic, just in how like characters interact and how the world is kind of set up. It kind of felt like this was this is Bebop if it was set in present day almost. Yeah, so I thought that was an interesting take on it, because sometimes during the show they don't really have a lot of time to...
They really don't establish a lot of environments. They're kind of just say, we're here, we're going to find this person for the bounty, and then move on, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, but here you got a better feel of what was going on. I really enjoy how it took this story that apparently was supposed to be like one of the episodes, and was able to do a lot with it, especially in the animation, and particularly in some of the action-y moments, like some of the set piece kind of things, like space battle, explosion-y type things. You could tell,
even though technically there wasn't that many of them in this movie actually compared to the show.
Yeah, but like when they happened, you were like, whoa.
It was such...
Like, it was real impressive.
You can clearly tell they were very happy to get a bigger budget. Subtle moments that I felt, like whether it was when they were flying and shooting off in this quick space battle, or the whole train scene that they had.
Yeah, the train scene was great.
With Spike fighting off Vincent. Just the whole action scenes again, just the hand-to-hand, just the chops and everything, the kicks, like they were just so much more fluid and quicker compared to probably just the standard amount of cells of animation they could do for the show. So
and it was already great in the show.
Yeah, it was already like damn near perfection. And they somehow perfected more. I don't even know how they did that. They expressed a lot of positivity in this movie. There's a lot to like, hell, to love about this movie. But you wanted to bring up a point, and this will give us a segue to our negative nitpicks. They're not just hardcore negatives, but there are nitpicky moments where it's just like, this could have been just a hint better in terms of a movie. Looking at this as a general movie. It's tough to do sometimes, but we got to do that. That's the point, when we review stuff. So... Yep. You were saying about the runtime, right? The runtime of the film.
It clocks in almost under 2 hours, and you do feel like sometimes it is running a little bit longer than it should. In the middle, it kind of gets a little talky, a little lengthy. It has a little bit to do with some of the character interactions and some exposition kind of things.
This is, I guess, where I can chime in with my negative, and I did not care for the character Elektra. There is a point to her.
Yeah.
But she is the brand new character for the movie, and she was not featured in the show. This was like Vincent, this was a character made for this movie. She could have had a purpose, because there was set up for a motivation for her to be in this.
Yeah.
And especially up against Vincent, and again, we won't spoil too much on that, because I guess it was kind of a twisty thing, maybe. Just a hint of it, as to why she was involved in wanting to hunt down Vincent herself. But
I like that part.
But they didn't explore that very much, unfortunately. They kind of just said it and went on.
I like what they were trying to do with her, but what they ended up doing with her wasn't entirely all that interesting and didn't really add a whole lot.
She was just kind of there for, like, even when she was introduced, she kind of just, she just shows up. It's integral to kind of make this character interesting. And she, unfortunately, was pretty forgettable. And when she was not on screen, I was just like, oh, you're here. I forgot. Like, it's just like, she's not bad, it's just she's very bland. She's very blandly written, and that's to me, I would rather have a badly written character that's so over the top, or just bad, versus a bland character, because then that makes you forget that they're even in the movie, and that's the
It makes you think, like, why wouldn't they have just used Faye?
Yeah, you would think that, right?
Instead of her. Which is also one of my problems with the movie a little bit. They did make Faye a little bit of a damsel in distress.
So, that's a bummer, considering how strong of a character she is.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
But for a good chunk of the movie, she is incapacitated.
Yeah, that's not great to see a good character like that literally be tied up.
I still think Faye, and really all of the crew kind of needed, I don't know, it needed something because they were all pretty much separated the whole time.
There's very few moments where they were together, but when they were together, it was great.
Yeah.
I don't want to bash this movie because it's one of those things where you're like, shit, this is still pretty damn great. It's a great film. That's probably the only major negative I think we can really say is that there was not enough togetherness for the characters. It's really
there's not enough of the crew.
It's something we just can't ignore, unfortunately, and we have to mention as a negative to you all.
Yeah.
Despite any nitpicks that we've just explained, it's still highly recommended viewing because there is still a lot to love about this film.
Watch it for for Vincent, for the villain, just to see him because he's great. Every time he's on screen,
I will
it's
say this: people that have voiced the characters, they've become very iconic now for these roles, and they've done so much more after.
Yep.
Particularly Stephen Bloom, who voiced Spike, and want to know who voices Vincent?
I don't know who voices him. Who?
Cosmo from The Fairly Odd Parents. It
Same
blew
guy.
my damn mind. I read that and I'm like, no. And then I read it even deeper and I'm like, Cosmo from The Fairly Odd Parents.
I don't get that at all. Like, I can't even imagine them being the same person.
I had to double check on that. It said Darren Norris in the credits, and that is the guy who I double checked too. Yeah, this is the guy who voiced Cosmo.
What else has he done?
He's done just a lot of random bits and cartoons, a lot of Nickelodeon shows because he's been in Nickelodeon for so long. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure to be in front of the camera for you all. But it's one of those things where we feel that we wanted to do something extra for you all. We wanted to not just be behind the microphone talking and just doing just the podcast. We felt we wanted to do something more for a little while now. And we felt this is the next best thing. Being on YouTube. The Fans Guide to Animation is a podcast. If you want to listen to any of our episodes from the last, 2 years? 3 years now? How long have we done
I think it's about 2 years now.
2 years now? Okay. All right, I'm losing track here of time. My God. Yes, all things for our podcast can be listened to on our website.
FGApodcast.com.
And I'll put little annotations and all that good stuff in the description below. You can follow us on all things social media there as well at FGA Podcast. We'll just keep on making more content for you all. We just want to reiterate our humblest of thank yous if you've checked out our first episode here. It's going to be a work in progress, but we're going to be talking about a lot of cool stuff in the near future, and we're just going to keep doing all things animation. I think that's a safe thing to say.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions, then feel free to, because now that we're not doing super long form things, if it's something that we can cover in like 10 minutes, then we might just do it.
Yeah, feel free to comment below or let us know on, again, any of our social media. That's the best way to reach us if you have any suggestions or even constructive criticism. We're always welcome to that. And this is something that we're not used to saying is please subscribe and ring that stupid bell that YouTube makes you ring.
Yeah, subscribe so that way you can keep up to date on all of our next uploads.
God, I hate doing that so much. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Fans Guide to Animation, the show.
show.
Jet.